What's good, y'all? My name is Dylan Green, and this is Real Notes, a space dedicated to blurring the cultural and artistic lines between rap and film. I'm here to chop it up with everyone from rappers and producers to journalists and video directors about their relationship to movies and how, if at all, film inspires their craft. My guest this week is journalist, author, and podcast producer Shawn Setaro. We spoke about the movies Annette, E.T., and Altered States, falling in love with hip-hop, his time as the editor-in-chief of Rap Genius and as a senior writer and podcast producer at Complex, the importance of beat journalism in 2021, his time covering the Tekashi 6ix9ine trial, and the creative process behind his first book, Dummy Boy, Tekashi 6ix9ine and the Nine Trey Gangsta Bloods. Come fuck with us. What's cracking, everybody? Welcome back to Real Notes. We're reporting live from the very past, because by the time this comes out, I think this will already be like 3 months old. We're recording this like really early, which is always fun, you know? Like, I'm with it. Dylan Green, CineMasai. I got a lot of names. Those are two of them. I do a lot of things, and today I'm here with somebody else who does a lot of things and has done a lot of things over the course of a very illustrious career. You know, this man's a former podcaster himself. He's been an editor at a bunch of different places. He's currently over at Complex doing God's work over there. He's a musician. He's very invested in this music shit in a way a lot of people aren't. I'm not even gonna talk anymore. It's Shawn Setaro. We got Shawn, the author of this incredible new Tekashi 6ix9ine book, Dummy Boy, which is out. I think it'll be out around the time we do this. So Shawn, brother, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Dylan, thank you so much for having me. And I'm gonna have that intro just playing on a loop every time I walk around. This is great. Illustrious. I like it.
Hey, man. I mean, like, I didn't even have to make that up. You've been all over the place, and like, and like, especially recently, like, just like, we're gonna get into all the 6ix9ine stuff, but just like, you've really been like, you know, like, I can say, like, since starting the podcast, or like even before I started this, like, the cipher was really integral to me even wanting to do something like this in the first place. So like, thank you first and foremost for all the work you and Josh did on the cipher. Like,
Well, thank you for saying that. Like, it's been really, that show was obviously a labor of love for both of us. And it's been amazing to see so many shows, so many podcasts, hip hop podcasts come out in the past couple of years that, are very different, but have, the hosts say they listen to the cipher or were fans, or there's a tiny bit of the show's DNA in what they do. And that, that really makes me happy.
hey, man, like, you earned it. Like, you did the work, and like, like, I can't think about recording like this without thinking about the Elzai episode you did. Like, that was the one that I was really like, okay, this is serious, like, and just yesterday I was re-listening to the or not re-listening, I was actually listening to it for the first time, the Jericho Jackson episode, and just like the insight y'all got out of the two of them off of that album, which I love, was super dope. So yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that was I think after we recorded that one, I tried really hard to pry for information about the then, not yet released Busta album, but they were not saying nothing.
Did Crisis have beats on the Busta album?
I don't even know, but I knew that he had heard it, maybe because he tweeted about it or because he was so close to Ninth who had tweeted about it. I don't remember, but I had some indication that he had heard it, and it was, and everyone who had heard it at that point before it was released was saying it was, the next classic album of the universe, right? I'm sure you remember those sort of early teasers people were letting out. So I tried unsuccessfully to get information, but he was very smartly tight-lipped about the whole thing.
I mean, yeah, I get it. Like, that's like, like, that album was what, like 20 some odd years in the making. When did the first ELE come out? I don't remember anymore.
Yeah, I don't know. Probably, yeah, close to 2 decades ago, right? Certainly.
Yeah. I can't remember, but yeah, like, that was, I walked away slightly disappointed by it. Like, there's a lot of stuff on there that I love, but I just thought it was way too long and there was too much filler. And like, the Kendrick song is really nice. And so is the song with Rakim, the first song. I really like that one. Too much Chris Rock.
Mm-hmm.
Too much Chris Rock.
I could have lived without that Rhapsody duet too, as much as I love her.
Ooh,
Yeah, that was
awful.
a moment. Yeah, that was rough.
Yeah, that was because like yeah, because like one more thing before we move on, it kind of reminded me of you remember the song that she did with Royce on the Prime 2 album? Like it kind of seemed like the inverse of that. Like they were trying to aim for that, but they just like they bricked. It was terrible. So bad.
Yeah, it's tough. And she is obviously just a huge talent. And I was like, is this
Right.
your idea? Like, is this your character or a character that he had? You know, I don't want to speculate as to where it all
Of course.
came from, but yeah, would have been better, left maybe on the cutting room floor.
Oh yeah, like not even like on the deluxe, like that's just like that never leaves the studio ever.
Yeah. I mean, look, you can have weird ideas and try them out. Certainly when the episode of the Cypher with Salam Remy, he talked about doing all kinds of experiments with Nas. And given the ones that did see the light of day, I can only imagine, what was left behind, because, the ones that came out were like the detective song and the Scarlet songs and all this kind of stuff. Like, and it was like, well, if that's what and so that's sort of, I'm kind of like, well, what didn't, what experiments did you have that didn't meet the bar?
Man, yeah, that detective song, man, like, cause like I remember when Hip Hop Is Dead came out, and I was really big on like the single, and Can't Forget About You is really nice, but like that detective song is like, why? Like what? Like whose idea was that to like let it out? Like, did Nas just like the song so much that he needed? Nah, man, just oof, he's not the best decision maker in a lot of respects, but like that was a moment. For real.
That was something that's still a joke in our household between me and my wife. That song, whenever we need a laugh, one of us will remember that it exists.
God, like yeah, it's just like it's instant, like I can't do that with my girlfriend, but like if I tried it, she would. It's so bad that if I tried it, she would immediately be like, "What the fuck is that? Like, what are you talking about right now?" It's just a universally, it's a bad idea with universal disappeal. I don't know, or something like that.
Right. Oh man, but yeah, so the cipher, like I'm thrilled that it's still out there in the world. All the episodes are still out there on the cyphershow.com. All 250 episodes are there to be found on there and on SoundCloud and Apple Podcasts or whatever it's called these days, and everywhere else. So you can although we're not making new episodes anymore, I intend to have the archive there for free for forever. Sure.
Right.
I feel like when I approach people for it, it was always with the idea that it would be the last time I talked to them. So I wanted to get, something for the archives.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, that's one of the incredible things about it. Like on top of the fact that you went for 250 episodes, which is wild in and of itself, like just, yeah, like having those archives is so valuable, and like rap doesn't have too many of those. Like there's more of them now than there were before, on top of, like the fact that there's a literal hip hop archive at Harvard type shit. But like, it's just like, I'm just always super thankful and appreciative of people who take time out of their schedule to like do things like that, and like, cause that's, like that archival work is like, people are going to look back on that stuff and want to know things. So like having those resources, they're resources, like on top of being entertaining, they're resources. And that's something that I kind of hope to do with this, as silly as this show can get sometimes. Like, like I hope that somebody takes something from this, this is like, I think by the time we drop this is going to be like 40 episodes, something like that. So hopefully somebody takes something from all of these.
I think they do. And I'll tell you, like, you've really hit on something great here in that, like, getting at just to the side of what people do normally can be a great way to, find out stuff about their thinking that you wouldn't get if they asked, if you asked them about, what they do every day. So I think it's, approaching people in the music world by talking to them about movies is a fantastic idea. And you've seen like all the places it takes you.
Yeah. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Like these are two things that mean the world to me for reasons I can't even begin to describe. And finding, like my name is CineMasai. So finding a way to kind of bring those two worlds together has been like a mission of mine for the last decade. And this is it. So yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. So yeah, like to not even waste any more time, I'm gonna ask you the same question that I ask everyone who comes on here, which is what's the last movie or show that you watched that you had a strong opinion about?
Well, funny you should ask. Last night I watched Annette, the Adam Driver and Marion Cotillard musical.
How
with
was
music
that?
by Sparks, and I loved it. I loved it. It was incredible. It was, moving and made you think, and the music sticks with you. And it's like the characters were great, and the way they deal with the title character, which I'm sure either some of your listeners will have read about or have seen, but I don't necessarily want to spoil. The title character is the daughter of the two kind of leads. How they deal with her is just so creative and amazing and moving. And yeah, just every aspect of it was so well thought out. And I loved it. I thought it was really, really amazing. And there's a, I don't know if twist is the right word, but a big event midway through that is very unusual. And
I think I know what it is.
It was just something that I hadn't seen in a movie in, I don't even remember when, something that would take that big a chance that early on and pull it off.
I think I know what you're talking about, because the first time I heard about it, I think it was specifically about this scene. I don't want to spoil it either. But should I? I don't know. I guess I won't. But like I'm sure that like if people have heard about Annette, that's the thing. That's the one that that's the first thing I saw. So I imagine that it's the first thing a lot of people who weren't already familiar with it probably saw. It's very similar to something that happened in The Green Knight, kind of, I think. Have you seen The Green Knight?
I haven't yet, although I really want to. I definitely really want to. I've heard amazing things.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. It was a lot to take in one sitting, and I fell asleep a couple of times because it was really late and I was really tired. But it's beautiful. Dev Patel is amazing in it. Alicia Vikander is amazing in it. Definitely something you need to like don't go in asleep. Like don't go in tired. Like you will miss things and you will be confused. Because I missed I went back and rewatched it, and there was a very important piece of context that I missed, and like it made a lot of things make sense. And I fell asleep for like 5 minutes at the very beginning of the movie, and I missed like one of the coolest scenes. It's just dumb. But yeah, so Annette and The Green Knight have something very similar happen in both of them that I'm not going to get into, because people should go see the movie, because I want to see it too. I haven't seen Annette yet, but I'm happy to hear that it's tight.
Yeah, I will say also, just a few days prior, I had seen Altered States, the Ken Russell movie from I think maybe 1980, with a very young William Hurt that I had never seen before. And there's, my wife has been on a kick of watching Ken Russell movies, a kick I'm happy to go along with. And she's a filmmaker. And so one of the things that, is less so in Altered States than some of Ken Russell's other movies, like, Tommy or whatever, but that sort of plays along with Annette, is this idea of like, is something happening? Is what you're seeing on the screen an actual event or a kind of metaphorical representation of something? And the answer is yes. Like I think that that was an aspect of Annette that reminded me of some of Ken Russell's films, if only because I had just seen a few of them in a row.
Right. I love when things line up together like that, you know, like when things that you wouldn't expect to be able to connect the dots on are on just kind of like slide together in that way. Cause like I think the first time I saw Altered States, I was in high school.
Wow.
And yeah, cause like me and all my friends were really into the Criterion collection. Like we had just discovered what it was. And I'm pretty sure Altered States is in the Criterion collection. So we watched it. And like I came out some sort of different, you know, like I don't even know how to describe it, but it's just like it was a really crazy example of just like what like it feels like existentialism like personified, you know, like it feels like somebody bottled existentialism and just like sold it to people. Like it's just such a weird, wonderful little movie that like it makes no sense, but it makes all the sense. And I hate saying stuff like that, but that's the only way I could describe a movie like Altered States.
Yeah, and it's funny because it's kind of for Ken Russell, if you look at like compared it to like Lair of the White Worm or Tommy or something, it's pretty reeled in, right?
Yeah.
But it's also by any standards completely nuts. It's just by the standards of, you know, a normal Ken Russell movie, it's a bit subdued because he
Right.
was working on a screenplay, working from a screenplay from someone else. Like from his point of view, he was just filming what was on the page.
Right.
Although the screenwriter obviously didn't exactly agree with that take and ended up leaving the production. Yeah, so that's what I've been up to lately. Sorry to expand the intro for 10
No,
minutes or whatever.
I don't care. Like we're here to talk, bro. This is just like this is casual as possible. And I actually had something I wanted to add to that because it's like I love the idea of like taking really weird filmmakers like Ken Russell and like I think about like David Lynch, right? Because like Lynch is like probably like the like he's always the example that everyone goes to for like the weird filmmaker in some respects. And like he even has his like this is weird, but it's not weird. Like it's not weird compared to everything else. You know, I feel like something like that is like Blue Velvet or like even like Mulholland Drive, you know, like
Mhm.
people always cite those. Like I feel like those two and Eraserhead are the three that everyone is like everybody who's seen at least one David Lynch movie has seen one of those three movies.
Mhm.
But like you compare like Blue Velvet to something like man, like Dune, you know, or like you compare it to damn, what else? Like his cartoon series Dumbland. I don't know if you've ever seen
I
Dumbland,
haven't.
but it's just about this guy who lives in a trailer park and everything is drawn like a really shitty pencil drawing. And it's like the weirdest and most like it's just it's a lot. It's a lot. That's all I'm gonna say. I think you might be able to find it online. My friend had a DVD of it at
Mhm.
some point, but you know, just like it's always interesting to think about like these filmmakers that we consider to be weird and they have that one movie that everyone knows and it's like you think that's weird,
Right.
like go further down the rabbit hole and then get back to me. Like
Right.
I like that shit. So you know like it seems to me like you have a pretty extensive background, especially considering the fact that your wife's a filmmaker, which I didn't know, by the way. That's
Mhm.
cool. That's great. um so for you, what's the first movie experience you can remember having? Like it could be at your cousin's house, the theater, it could be like on some random TV in the middle of Times Square. Like
That's a that's a good question. I should be more prepared for this because I knew you ask your other guests, but I would say probably something along the lines of like maybe like ET or uh yeah, I would say probably like ET or Jedi, something like that, some like very early 80s vibe. Maybe I don't remember if I saw Empire in theaters. I was born in 77, so like I was alive when it came out, but very young.
right.
Um, so I have clearer memory of Jedi and then sort of working backwards because all those movies, you know, were just sort of in theaters perpetually, all of the first three Star Wars movies, kind of for what seemed to me like most of the first half of the 1980s. They were always just playing somewhere.
That's so interesting because like I know movies kind of work differently back then because like you even look at a company like Disney who was like really like they were really conservative about how they released their movies, and they would always do like the 5-year anniversary release and the 10-year anniversary release before they kind of cracked the home video code and just like
Mhm.
started printing money with those cassette tapes that I grew up on, like, so I can't even imagine what it must have been like for Star Wars and just like really cinema in general, because I know that like repeat screenings of movies kind of worked differently, or like on a different schedule, or there were like different standards or something.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, I definitely, I always had the impression that, Disney movies, for example, would circulate in the theater every like, you know, I had the impression, I have no evidence to back this up, but that every like 5 to 7 years or something, they would bring out, whatever Disney movie from decades prior so the new generation of kids could see it. I assume that if that strategy happened, that it stopped a long time ago with, home video just sort of completely taking off.
It's pretty wild because it actually like it kind of sort of did, but it didn't. I just watched this whole really long this YouTube channel I love called Yesterworld. Shout out to Yesterworld. They did 2 whole episodes on like the history of like Disney home video and like the whole like re-release thing they do. And they like broke it down to like as far as it could possibly be broken. And like Disney tried to like, cause like they were like into the theater thing, and then home video happened. But like they still kind of sort of did it with like there was like a specific stable of movies that they would release every handful of years. And like they did the IMAX screenings, and they did like the 3D thing when 3D was really starting to pop off in theaters. But like the home video thing really started to take off. And now it's like, now that we're kind of out of the majority, like since like most people are doing streaming now, as opposed to like going out and like not everyone is out trying to grab the Little Mermaid like they were back in like the late 80s, early 90s. So like I'm interested to see how. I'm completely sorry that I just like completely went off from your bit about Star Wars, because that was why I even brought it up. So
Yeah,
see,
I
now I'm
mean,
rambling.
no, not at all. So yeah, I would say some of those like, early mid 80s blockbusters are some of the earliest that were sort of kid appropriate, are some of my earliest movie memories.
Right. Do you have a favorite out of those specifically? Like, yeah.
I mean, I don't know, because I think it's been so long since I've seen, a lot of them. Certainly, I have fond memories of the Star Wars trilogy and have seen them a bunch, but I'm not like, I wouldn't say a super fan who knows all the lines and has seen them all a dozen times.
Same.
Kind of somewhere in the middle of like very, very warm feelings toward them, but I'm not up on all of the nuances.
Did you were you a fan of the new ones? Because I know those are kind of divisive. Like I love The Last Jedi. I think it might be my favorite one that isn't Empire, honestly.
Mhm.
Like The Last Jedi was great.
Big Last Jedi fan. I will say that the first one of the newest trilogy, I saw in theaters, had a great time. But even as I was watching it, I felt the time, and having a fantastic time in a big screen, I felt the tiniest bit hollow, like, oh, they're just remaking the first one, sort of
More or
beat by
less.
beat.
Yeah.
And but yeah, I thought Last Jedi was great. I thought it did amazing things and had great themes and laid stuff out that unfortunately the final movie just kind of completely skewered.
Oh
Like
man.
the idea that the central character didn't have to be kind of have a special bloodline was very powerful. And then they just sort of wrote that out of existence and sort of, you know, whatever you want to call it, retconned it or what. I don't know if it's retcon because it's not like it was any other way, but just kind of made it a more obvious thing. And that was disappointing to me.
Same. Yeah. Like I screened it. I saw the Rise of Skywalker for free and I wanted my money back. I was so upset. I was so upset. Like, yeah, and that's why I love The Last Jedi, right? Because because like you said, that idea that it doesn't have to be a Skywalker or a Solo or whoever is just like, I was like, great, we're moving in a new direction. They're gonna like actually try to make this something like expansive, like they've been promising with the books and all this. And then it was like, oh nope, she's just a Skywalker, or no, like she's like what, like Palpatine's daughter, right?
Yeah, the
Rey is
Emperor's daughter or
granddaughter.
something. Yeah, or
Right, yeah,
granddaughter. Yeah, yeah,
right. Like, come on, bro. Like,
yeah.
are you serious? Like you could tell they got, like, I think they got scared. I think that they got so scared at how loud all the people who didn't like The Last Jedi were, and they were like, okay, fine, she's there, cool, whatever. Like, come on, man.
Yeah, that movie also was a little bit like, we've got to do thing A, but before we can do thing A, we've got to do thing B, and but before we can do thing B, we've got to do thing C, and then you go C, B, A, and by that time you're halfway into the movie and nothing's really happened yet. I feel like as much as I liked the TV show, it to me was a little bit of that formula too.
Which TV show? There are a lot of them.
Oh, sorry. The Baby Yoda one. The
Mandalorian?
Mandalorian, yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking, because I was just thinking about Star Wars Rebels for some reason.
Okay. No, it was a little bit, I enjoyed it, but it was a little bit like, oh, we've got to do this, but before we can do this, we've got to go to this other place and do this first thing. And,
right.
Sort of wash, rinse, and repeat or whatever.
Yeah. Like, and like, that's part of the reason why I didn't really keep up with The Mandalorian like that. Like, I like it, but it's not like I wasn't, people were like gripped by The Mandalorian, and I just wasn't one of them, like I love seeing Carl Weathers in anything. So that was great. But like, yeah, I agree. I got nothing to add to that. I agree. So, like, you have this base right here, and for you, as you grew up and kind of started to take in more movies and just like more experiences in general, like, was there like what was the movie for you that made you fall in love with movies and kind of like recognize them as something beyond just entertainment, if that ever happened? Because I don't like to assume that happened for everyone, but
sure. So there were definitely things like that I loved growing up. I would say, Do the Right Thing was an experience like that. Seeing Kids when that came out was an experience like that because it was so visceral and something, not that it was like a documentary of my suburban teenage life, but something about it was like, oh, this is like, seems like something closer to real teenagers, right, than other screen portrayals I'd seen. But the real thing was when I went to college. I was in music school and wanted to do anything but music in whatever off time I had. So I discovered the Brattle Theater in Harvard Square, which I believe is still there. And I went to see Blue, the Kieslowski film. And I don't remember why I went to see it. I think maybe it was the recommendation of a roommate at the time or something. I don't remember. But that film, I walked out of there being like, I don't know what happened, but I was gripped every moment and I need to find out more. If for anyone who hasn't seen that film, it's very old. So, 1993 or something. So like no spoilers, but there's a sort of central mystery of there is a conductor who dies and sort of who created his music is sort of a central mystery, right? Was it him? Was it his now widow, who is the movie's central character? Was it some combination? Like, we don't really know, and that sort of slowly gets unspooled throughout the film. And I just didn't really get a lot of that on the first watching, but I got that something was happening and there was some unanswered questions, and the way the stuff was shot was just not like anything I'd ever seen. There's a very long, famous shot in that of just a sugar cube soaking up coffee for what seems like an eternity. And I just don't know if I'd ever seen anything that really reached in and demanded your attention like that before, and was like, this is a shot and you need to think about it and what it's saying and how it connects to the rest of the movie, which I think every movie has. I just didn't know that, you know, to look for it, right?
Right. Yeah, but like you recognized it then, and that's all that matters. Like everyone's journey starts at different times. And I can't say that I've seen Blue. I know what it is, but I never got the chance to watch it. Because it's crazy, because when you said that, the first place my mind went actually was you ever seen I Am Curious Blue or I Am Curious Yellow before?
No, no.
They're I think they're French movies, and they're about these two young adults, like a man and a woman, and they have a relationship. Really, really strange, but like super interesting and like really well made movies. I hadn't heard of it until I'd seen there's an episode of The Simpsons called I'm Furious Yellow, which is of course a playoff on the title, and I kind of put that together that way, and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. But before I forget, you went to Berkeley,
I
right?
did, yes. Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Wow. Yeah, no, you were doing music for real if you went to Berkeley. Wow. Um, so before we get to that though, what like let's jump to the other side of the tracks real quick. When did you first fall in love with music? Like when did you realize that that was something that you were willing to go to college for, I guess?
So it's funny. I don't know if there was ever one moment. I just kind of like started playing guitar when I was, I think, around 10. And when I really settled into a teacher, he was a Berkeley alum. So he had me working out of their books and learning stuff from their curriculum, just because sort of that was how he learned. And I don't remember if there was a point where I was like, I want to do that, but it just kind of became, a natural thing. I got very, very into it. And it seemed like a natural step to kind of follow his lead. So shout out to Ed Cedar.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that answer a lot. Just like I just like the idea that music is this like thing that's in the background of just about everybody's life. Like it's very rare that you find someone who like hasn't at least listened to a song before, and like music just kind of permeates the mind in a way that like a lot of other things, like even film doesn't, like I can't even, it's something you can't really even put into words, but like once you get it, you get it. And especially if you have someone there to kind of like guide you through it in a more specific way, like that's potent for real.
Yeah, it was, Berkeley is a great experience. It's one of those places that, it sounds cliche, but you really get out of it what you put into it, right? You can do fine and get by and graduate, or you can spend all of your time doing your thing and, take a million classes and chances and ensembles and whatever, and, come out the other side, completely transformed. In that sense, hitting that at like 18 and realizing that was quite a lesson.
Wow. Yeah. And like the thing about cliches, like cliches become cliches because they stand the test of time and like they make sense, So like, I think it fits. And especially as someone who also did that, like when I was in college, I knew that I wanted to write about movies, and music came later, even though music was a part of my life. But like, I really focused in on the criticism part, and I like dug into that, and like, I still have friends and connections that I made at college to this day. I'm about to turn 30 next year. And like, so yeah, I get it, like that's just a testament to everything that you were just saying.
Yes.
So for you, let's get a little more specific. Like, when did you first fall in love with rap music? Like, when did that happen for you?
So it's a bit of a slope, right? Like I definitely remember being aware of it and loving. I feel like there was a lot of mid 80s rap that was perfect for children. If you think of like Run DMC, right? Very, very, the humor, especially on God, what was the one that had like the almost like knock knock joke setup? You Be Illin', right?
Yeah,
Has
yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
has the not exactly knock knock joke with the kind of like super basically like kid punchlines, right? So I feel like definitely becoming aware of a lot of that stuff, and then Run DMC and the Fat Boys, and the maybe just a year or two after that, the Beasties, when they sort of first came out and took over the world.
Right.
And one of the most interesting aspects of my adult life has been meeting and in some cases becoming friends with people who were directly responsible for bringing that to the wider world, including where I was in suburban New Jersey, right? Like, Bill Adler, who was heading Def Jam's PR efforts at that time. Not that Run DMC was on Def Jam, but they were, Rush
Right.
Management, same family. And certainly the Beasties and, all of that stuff. Like, he is a friend and mentor now. And that's, kind of mind blowing to me. And the other people I've met who've been part of those efforts, either, in those early years or shortly afterwards, it's always kind of incredible to me, because like, well, this was my first real exposure to this music, outside of like some breakdancing craze stuff, which, hit probably around the same time, if not a little bit before. I remember, in like grade school coming across some of that. Michael Holman has this great idea where, he managed New York City Breakers for a while, and he calls breakdancing the lost leaders of hip hop.
Right.
And I think that's very true, and that they were sort of that was the first art form to really break through in a mainstream way, even slightly before the music, in a kind of like national enveloping way.
That's crazy,
Yeah.
because I feel like I've written about this, but I interviewed my dad a couple of years ago for Father's Day, and he's 76. So he was already a grown man when hip hop was starting to, and he's from the Bronx. So like he was like in the Bronx when hip hop was like starting. And the first time he saw breakdancing, he thought that people were having seizures, like on the ground. Like he went over to his friend. He was like, "Hey Pam, like those boys are having seizures downstairs." And she was like, "They're just breaking. Don't worry about them." And he was like, "What's that?" And like, like that's, once again, like that's really that's so many people's first, that was so many people's first exposure to it, especially around that time.
Sure.
Like,
and if you think about it, a few years after that, by the mid 80s, it's like at the Olympics and all this sort of crazy stuff, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. So just an absolute, it's sort of weird to think back now, but that, that craze was so huge. But yeah, so I think like, the I would say kind of that like, Run DMC, Fat Boys, Beasties, and then a few years later, around 88, certainly Yo MTV Raps, watching that, and by extension, sort of Public Enemy, NWA, things like that. But I would say I was definitely up on a lot of that, and then by the time and then obviously like, with the early 90s, obviously a lot of stuff came up my radar then, but it wasn't really until I was in college and like that I listened to hip hop all of the time, that it went from some of my listening to pretty much all of it as sort of a gradual thing, in part because, ironically, given that I later ended up working at Rap Genius, I wanted music where I didn't have to think about how do they make that, and I could just enjoy it. Whereas being in music school, so much of it's like, how did they make that? Can I do that? How did that person play that thing? And so listening to rap was a way of engaging with music where I didn't have to feel like it was any sort of competition. I could just enjoy it.
Right. Unless you wanted to break it down, which you could, but like.
But well, it's funny. I mean, that's what I ended up doing, right? At Genius for so long, years later. But that was sort of like, at that point, it became, sort of as a percentage of my total listening, it ramped up and up and up and up to, at a certain point, almost everything.
Mm. So before I move on, you mentioned suburban New Jersey. Where in Jersey are you from? Because I'm from Jersey.
Okay, I'm from East Windsor, which is
Okay.
pretty near Princeton, I would say. If you're
Oh
kind
yeah,
of
you're
looking for, dead center of the state, more or less.
yeah. I'm from Montclair. I'm like right outside of the city.
Oh, very
Like,
nice. I've some friends and family live there currently. So
mm, yeah, yeah. Montclair was always pretty nice, but it also it's such an interesting town just out of like how there's a lot it's very diverse economically, a little less so now. It's kind of
Mhm.
been gentrified. It was already pretty nice, but it's like getting like super gentrified.
I
But yeah.
saw that article about how it's now the headquarters of the New York Times, effectively. That article from a few weeks ago. I don't know if
Sure.
you saw
I,
it. Yeah,
I did actually, yeah.
yeah.
And yeah, like there's um one more really quick tangent. I my the area that I used to live in when I went to high school, they wouldn't send buses there. Like you either had to be driven, take public transportation, or walk. And just last year, they started sending buses to that area, and it was like not like a terrible area. Like it's the South Side, like I guess I think fourth, maybe a fourth ward, I forget. But either way, like they just started sending buses over there. So like it's just interesting to see
Wow.
how like the cheese buses. It's really interesting to see that development, especially considering that one area still also doesn't have a grocery store to call its own. It's a lot.
Hmm.
It's really a lot. But Montclair is interesting. I love it, and I have weird issues with it too, especially now. But yeah, Jersey is like that sometimes.
Definitely.
Oh man. Um, and so like this idea, I was gonna ask you this later, but like you've already kind of broached it by talking about how with your relationship to rap, how it kind of started for you as this like as something that you didn't necessarily need to break down in the same way you were doing with other music, considering the stuff you were studying. So like as you start to approach writing, like how is being a college educated musician kind of informed the way you write about music? Because I know a lot of people who have musical experience. There are some people who tend to think that you need that to be able to do it. I'm not one of those people, but like for you personally, how did having that musical background kind of inform the way you started writing?
So I had a bit of a circuitous path to writing stuff. I would say, like, when I was in college, I did a little bit of music journalism, but it was primarily interviews, right? And it was for like a little extra money here and there. Um, and occasional album reviews. And I guess to most directly answer your question, I don't know, in that I can't undo myself. I can't A/B test with another version of myself that didn't go to Berkeley,
Right.
right? So I don't know if I have a great answer for that. I will say the best way I can directly answer that is to say, I feel like not even the music education, but just having been in rehearsal rooms, having been in studios, having been on tour, allows me maybe a little bit of an easier rapport with performers and especially with producers than
Right.
I might have had otherwise. I can't say better than other people. I certainly don't know. Again, I can't but certainly for me, I feel like having that experience as a working musician has helped me maybe connect with music makers in a more direct way. And just that, like, yeah, I know not nearly on the level that a lot of them are at, but I know a little bit about what aspects of that life and profession are like. So that has been helpful in, interviewing people.
Absolutely. Yeah, that context is so important.
Mhm.
Like it's once again, it's not really required, but it helps. Like it's not like a detriment. Like so like it's definitely helped me. Having a handful of experiences and like playing music myself, like and like knowing at one point knowing how to read music. It's been a while. I'm kind of rusty, but like, just those experiences, they help more than they hurt, if they even hurt at all. That is kind of what I'm getting at.
Yeah, definitely. I would say so. I'd say it's been, I feel like it's been very helpful to me, but I don't know if like there's not like I'm not generally, and never really have outside of a little bit decades ago, never really done criticism exactly. So that kind of like, how does that music education work when, reviewing music? That really hasn't been my path for whatever strange combination of reasons. Yeah.
Right. Before we move on to your time at Genius, because I'm very interested in that, I just realized I forgot to ask you one of my like starting 6 questions, which is like especially after something like Blue, like or maybe even before or after, like was there ever a period of time where you consciously linked film and music together in your head and recognized them as two things that kind of inform and like amplify each other?
Huh. I don't know. I don't know if I would, I don't know if I conceptualized it like that exactly. I would say that like, I don't think it's a coincidence that, when I was at music school, when I was working as a musician, I ended up at, art theaters a lot, but I don't know if that, yeah, I don't know if I had like a unified theory about it exactly.
I respect that. Yeah, that's all good. Um, yeah, that's it's like whenever I ask that question, it feels kind of abstract. Like I like to the point where I've never found a proper way to like ask the question. I always ask it differently. So, I respect and appreciate that you answered it like that, because that's kind of that can be a difficult thing to answer for sure. Like it's even a difficult thing to answer for me. Like I don't really know if I have a point where I was like, that's when it happened, Like, so yeah, so at some so before we even once again before we even get to like your official career as a journalist, like when did you decide that you wanted to be a rap journalist? Like was there
Man, that was never on, yeah, it wasn't a decision exactly. So, this ties in directly to Genius, basically, in that, when I discovered that website, I happened to stumble on it very early. And, I've said this before, it tied, the way it worked, its functionality tied into a lot about how I thought about hip hop lyrics anyway. In the sense that, like, if there was a reference in a lyric to something else, I almost thought of it as like a hyperlink in my head. It jumps from here to there. Right. And so
that's a great way to put that.
Seeing that made tangible was amazing. It was like someone had reached into my brain and put it on the internet. And so I immediately became very, very deeply involved in this thing. But it was a hobby. It was something I did, when I had time or whatever. And I certainly, if you'd say, do you want to make this website your career? It'd have been like, well, do I want to win the lottery? Like, what are you talking about? But, one day all of a sudden there's VC money, and it is a part-time job and then a full-time job and then this crazy ride. And, by the time that ended, in 2014, I had done all of this amazing stuff. I had, luckily, because the website was so small, one of their early strategies of getting the name out there was to just have Rap Genius branded content in a bunch of different outlets. And I wrote it all because there wasn't really anyone else to do it. So I had bylines in all of these crazy places, the Atlantic and weird, Source and, a dozen places. And, I had met and interviewed all of these stars. By the time I left, the podcast was going, albeit under, under its original name at that point. And so it was like, well, I should keep doing this. I'm in it pretty deep. And, I'm good at least this aspect of this thing I was doing. I mean, Genius was not a typical media outlet in that there wasn't news, wasn't news focused. It wasn't features focused. It was a different animal. But, I think I had at that point talked to dozens and dozens and dozens of artists about their, or maybe hundreds of artists about their work and their songs and, their music, and was like, okay, let's see if we can keep, let's see if I can keep doing this. And, it took a while. At first I was writing for Forbes, anything about music and business, anything with a dollar sign in the headline.
Right.
They were great. Shouts to Zach and Natalie, who are no longer there, but who were extremely helpful in getting that going. And then, after a while and some ups and downs, Complex came along. And, I sort of started up the ladder there.
Yeah. Now your title is, you're the associate editor at Complex, right?
So that actually has changed recently. I'm now before I was, on the editorial side of things, like writing and reporting stories.
Right.
But with the success of the infamous podcast about Tekashi, which, ultimately the book sort of came out of the work we did for that.
Absolutely.
I am now, my full-time job is writing and reporting podcasts. So for Complex. So we just put out one about Pop Smoke, Complex subject Pop Smoke. And there's another one that I shouldn't say too much about yet, coming next month. And some other exciting stuff in the works. So yeah, so that's the gig now is writer and reporter for podcasts.
Damn. Well, congratulations, because I didn't know that.
Yeah, thank you.
Of course, yeah, I knew. Of course, I knew everything you were doing with the Tekashi podcast and the Pop Smoke one, which I haven't listened to yet, but I have it queued. I'm definitely gonna dive in because I've been so, man, like I'm still thinking about him, man. 20 years old, like I'm just like over nothing too. Like I talk about this with everybody. Like his death has really just been on my mind so heavy. More than most.
It's a real tragedy. And, if we can believe what, the cops and jailhouse informants and everyone have said about what happened, and it seems credible to me. I've read, all of the court transcripts on it so far, but obviously it's a case still in progress. I think the main guy is, maybe undergoing plea deals, but that can always change. So,
Right.
all alleged, but the picture that the investigators paint makes a lot of sense to me. And if what they say happened is true, it's just, and we outline what that version of the story in the podcast, it's so heartbreaking and so unnecessary and hurtful on so many levels, because it was a home invasion. They wanted to rob a famous rapper for money and for clout.
Exactly.
Right. And even we get into this a little bit in the podcast. It's a little bit subtext, and I don't necessarily want to go into it because I don't know, and we'll never know Pop's frame of mind. But if the sequence of events is laid out is how it actually happened, it seems like he was caught in a vulnerable position. His stuff was taken, and then he tried to get it back.
Yeah.
And that was really the thing that seemed to push it over the edge. And I think that's also really sad and tragic, and gets into a number of things that, I think are hinted at in the podcast. I don't necessarily want to fully get into, because again, I don't
Right.
know his state of mind, why he might have done that, but I think there's a lot there. I'll just say that.
Totally. Yeah, there really is a lot there. And but like at the same time, like we can get into this later once we get into more Tekashi stuff, but like I just think that, like we're talking about archival stuff earlier, like this is like that type of storytelling, especially considering how especially considering that the podcast bubble is just getting bigger and bigger and shows no signs of popping anytime soon. Like that's like I can't tell you how many people I know who get information solely through things like this,
Mhm.
like that. So like I think like laying that groundwork the way that you did, the way that y'all did with the Tekashi story and moving into that is just like really really incisive, and
Thank
like
you.
insightful. Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, we were very fortunate with the timing of the Tekashi thing, in that, like, because I was already researching him when he was arrested, which we can, get into when we sort of talk about the story of the book. By the time he testified at trial, we'd already done dozens of interviews and knew
Right.
more or less what he was going to say. There were some details on the outside that we didn't know, and maybe I think one incident in particular that I only knew maybe half of and not the full story, but basically everything we'd already sort of had confirmed from other interviews, other sources, whatever, other court proceedings. And uh, so we were able to get the show out sort of before this wave of documentaries, all of, both of which were good, both
Yeah.
of, obviously one of which I was in.
Yeah.
Um, um, so shout out to Vikram, and also to the Showtime team too. There, unfortunately, I was not able to be interviewed for that because of COVID craziness.
Oh man.
But they definitely did their thing. But we were able to kind of get out in front of that because we'd been sort of running the whole time.
Right. Yeah, and and of course that all starts with what eventually became the cipher. And yeah, I understand that it. I don't know what the different name was, but I know it started there and kind of evolved into something over the course of its life. So like, kind of just like walk me through the cipher's lifespan from its inception at Genius and up until I guess the
Sure,
250th.
sure. So uh, we had Jean Grey coming in. I had somehow arranged that. It's somewhat lost to my memory, but I think like I was a really big fan, and she saw some stuff that I'd done on the website with her lyrics and liked it and said, well, this is right, but what about this and this? And we ended up arranging an interview. And I really, really, really prepared for that interview. Listened to as much of her, or re-listened to as much of her music as I could in advance, prepared a ton of questions, read, everything I could about her. And when she did the interview, it was great. It was ended up being the original intent of it was not for any kind of podcast. The original intent was to cut it up into tiny bits and use them as annotations on the site, right? Ask her a question about a lyric, use that maybe minute of her answer to put as like its own URL, its own annotation on the website. That was always the original intent. Afterwards, I realized, I thought it went really well. She thought it went really well. Um, it is a measure of something about rap journalism and sexism and everything that there aren't a million great interviews with Jean Grey, or that, more to the point, that she felt that being asked about her music and her songs and her lyrics and her production was so unusual as to
Right.
be, notable, right? It should be something that happens a million times a day. Um, but it's funny actually, in researching, I remember researching for that interview, and just this endless barrage of people asking her, at first in early years, how do you feel about Lil Kim? As if the like smart underground rapper who's a woman should talk shit about the like mainstream, whatever woman who maybe is more overtly sexual in her image or whatever, right?
Right.
Try to bait her into saying something about Little Kim as if they're opposites. And you read enough of those interviews, and then at a certain point, people start asking the same question, but changing the name to Nicki Minaj.
Right.
And it was just, the whole thing was so depressing.
And then you get into like Meg Thee Stallion too, like
right. Yeah, I mean, were she still rapping regularly and doing press today, I'm sure she would get that version of the question, right?
Right.
So anyway, I had this amazing 45-minute interview, didn't know what to do with, and actually it was my now wife's idea. She said, why don't you put it up as a podcast? And I said, what's a podcast? And I mean, I don't remember. I may have had some vague idea about what it was, but certainly didn't listen to any, I didn't think know how to listen to any. So I called a tech savvy friend of mine and I said, I have this audio. How do I make it a podcast? And we ended up initially calling it Outside the Lines with Rap Genius, which was a pun on a now long gone video series on Rap Genius that was called Inside the Lines, where artists explained their lyrics or whatever. It was a pun that nobody got and that quickly became irrelevant because the video series didn't last very long.
Right.
Also, the name was confusing because of the ESPN show.
Okay.
Identically named ESPN show. So it was never a great name, but once it was there, it was there. And I realized, hey, I think this is another way of getting artists to talk about their work. And so, I kept it going and, interviewed people whenever I could. Often if they came into the Genius office, we get to explain their lyrics. And if I wanted them on the show, I would also try to pull them to another room and, get them to do an in-depth interview as well. And sort of that's how a lot of the early episodes went. Once I left Genius, I was able to keep the show, change the name to The Cypher, kept the catalog going. All of the early episodes are still there in their original form. A few of the exceptional ones we've reworked, to sort of put in a new format. The one with Reggie Osei, Combat Jack, we did that after he passed. Big Daddy Kane, Ron Isley, a few of the early ones we sort of updated, but, all of them are still there in their original form. But once we were outside of the Genius confines, Josh and I could really do what we kind of always wanted to do from the beginning and produce it more, right? And basically spend more time on it. And that's where we started adding some of the explanations and the cut-ins and all of the things that, and the music excerpts, and I think the things that really ended up defining the show.
Yeah. I love the way the excerpts always work, just like to kind of have somebody coming in on like a tinny radio voice to come in and like, I don't know why, but that's just such a really nice touch to me. It's just like a nice, it paces everything really well. I don't know. I just appreciated that a lot.
Thank you. And Josh was thrilled to hear his voice on that Boldy James record from last year, which ended up using an excerpt of his Cypher episode.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Wow. I didn't even notice that. What song? Which record and which song?
It was the experimental one he did.
The Sterling Tolls shit? The
Sterling Tolls record. Yeah. The Main Drum McNichols record. And so on a song toward the very end of that, the song is Mommy Dearest. So I guess it's about halfway through. Yeah. So because he had talked about that song, which was not at that point completed, I think he'd name dropped it. He talked about it in an interview or something. So I asked him about it. And they end up using that soundbite on the actual song, which was thrilling. And so Josh and I were both caught us by surprise. We're both super happy about that.
That's incredible. Like that's, like that's just another way to ensure that it lives forever. Like, that's like, like you're like being a footnote on an album like that is just like nuts to me. That's such a crazy thing to even have happen. Like, yeah. Wow.
By the way, can you hear that air conditioning? Should I shut it off?
No.
You can't hear it? Okay, great.
Not.
Okay. All right.
It's crazy. I'm literally sitting right next to an air conditioner and I can't hear that either. Like,
okay, great.
Shout out to good microphones for real. Like, we got good mics over here. um, so yeah, like with all of that said, I guess let's just jump into Tekashi.
Yeah.
Like
So Dummy Boy,
wow.
Tekashi 6ix9ine and the Nine Trey Gangsta Bloods, published by Kingston Imperial, coming should be out by the time people hear this.
Yeah.
Out this fall. So yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
It's wild because I met him, but well before I had any idea I'd be covering him. And now, of course, I look back on that interaction with like, why didn't I barrage him with questions instead of just kind of awkwardly standing there?
Where did you meet him first?
Academics brought him into the complex office and
Of
tried
course he
to
did.
introduce him to the editorial staff. This guy, he's up next. You got to meet him, blah, blah, blah. It was right around the time he did that. I think it was the same day he did that interview, Life at Complex interview that I think is maybe still up on YouTube.
Okay.
Where he's like spinning his jewelry around and has the fronts in and stuff. Like,
I vaguely remember that.
Believe it was that day. And that was not too long before I started, trying to figure out how to cover him. But now I look back on that interaction like, man, what a wasted opportunity.
But hey, you made up for it. And
definitely did.
Wow. So especially considering that you had already met him and we're kind of like, whatever. Like, what drew you to him? What was like, oh, like this is a project, or not even like this is a project, but like, what drew you to that story?
So initially, around, if you can think back to mid 2018, right? There's this SoundCloud rap wave.
Oh yeah.
Right. And publications, legacy publications, if you want to call Complex that, whatever, are trying to figure out how to cover it. And it's tough for a bunch of reasons. A lot of these artists don't really care about conventional press, right? They'd rather just speak directly to their fans via social media than have it be mediated by an interview. B, a lot of them have difficult, either rumored or sometimes confirmed personal behavior issues that make them difficult to write about, right? And that make it thorny, where you don't want to be like, oh, this person has a new song, isn't that cool, or whatever. You don't want to sort of cover them in that way. And you also don't want to start every article with 200 words of caveats before you can get into what you're there to talk about.
Facts.
So it was difficult, and we were trying to figure out how to do it. And one of the higher ups in the editorial side of Complex said, hey, with the 6ix9ine guy, maybe a way in is to look at this Treyway dude who's always around him. Who's that guy? And so this was the summer of 2018. And so I spent a while trying to dig into who he was and taking notes and who follows him on Instagram and who are all these like gangsters in the middle of Connecticut who are, in photos with him and whatever, trying to really, really get deep into that. And after a little while of that, the arrest happened. That was following November 2018. And they said, why don't you go to court? And so I went to court, and I missed the initial arraignment because I, was sort of just figuring out how stuff worked, but I was at the very first actual court hearing. It's funny because I actually got the day wrong the first time and went to the right room, but on the wrong day, and sat through a case about like someone stealing something from Whole Foods for a really long time before I realized I was in the wrong place. Or on the wrong day, rather.
You were like John Travolta, like when they put him in Pulp Fiction in the meme, just like in the room, like, what's happening?
Exactly. But, so then I started going to court, and Complex was very good in sort of letting me learn on the job, right? And just like I went to one court hearing and another one and wrote them up. And there were other reporters there at the big ones, but at the little ones, at every single one, not really. So I ended up really covering it sort of tip to tail. And at that time, Complex, we were looking for a way to get into podcasts. And so slowly with my partner on the project, Shiva, we ended up really convincing the powers that be at Complex to let us do a podcast about it, and started interviewing people. And, that just kind of continued for a long time. And, eventually the podcast, we finished it. We got a fantastic editor, Ann Hepperman, to help us out and really help us shape it. And, got a partner in Spotify to actually get it out there in the world. And, we ended up putting it out. And also shout out to our great, I should say, Anne was the producer, our great editor, Catherine St. Louis, also really, because it was my first time writing for audio, is the other thing. First time really writing for the ear as opposed to the eye. And so, there's a learning curve, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so we just followed the case super closely, interviewed everyone we could possibly think of who had any connection to the story, and ended up putting this podcast together. And, in the middle of the trial, I got a call from a book agent, and that sort of started the process that led to the book.
Wow. Yeah. So, the amount of reporting that I saw you because I remember that time very vividly, especially considering that, I was in the throes of kind of figuring out what was going on with XXXTentacion and how and if I wanted to write about him, because it was a period of time where it was X, it was X, it was Tekashi, it was Ski Mask, it was Trippie Redd, it was all these guys just kind of obviously they don't all have these behavioral issues and abuse allegations and confirmations, but they were all a part of that same SoundCloud wave you were talking about. Mm-hmm. And the one thing I remember is just you were always reporting something about the Tekashi case. There's always some sort of Shawn story about oh, this is what happened at the trial today, and it's just it was exhaustive, it was exhausting for me to see you reporting on it so much. I can't even imagine what it must just have been spending hours and dozens of hours in courtrooms just listening to all this stuff and having to go through the transcripts. That's real true blue reporting in the purest sense.
Well, thank you. I mean, look, it was a new experience for me. I'd meet other court reporters at these things and talk to them and try to get a sense of, what they, how they were doing stuff. And, it really, because it was one singular case, it really allowed me to dig in and find out, how it actually worked and get all of the information sort of as it was spooling out. And also I was doing these interviews on the side as well for the podcast that, added additional context to things. It was a lot. You go to court all the time. You see these people all the time. And there are a lot of memorable moments, certainly. There's a lot of really, the book is about the case. It's not about Shawn's reflections about the justice system, right? Although I think some of that is sort of implicit if you pay attention. But it's a lot being in a federal courtroom. It's a lot seeing people get sentenced to, 5, 10, 20, 24 years in prison, happened sort of toward the end. I mean, obviously, much more emotional for them and their families, of course, and their friends, but still, a lot to see. And it's just, but the whole thing was just that it was such a gripping story. You kind of couldn't believe that it was happening, right? The more sort of you uncovered it, you can't be did he really do this? And this? And did this happen? And this really? It just thought the whole thing was so insane that for a while I couldn't go anywhere without talking about the latest thing I had learned about the case. I'm sure I was a horrific bore to people I was at dinner parties with. You know, but it was kind of endlessly fascinating, and there was always a new layer to unspool. The way I thought about it at the time, the kind of metaphor I always used in my head was like, you had the track, let's say Tekashi was on, the road Tekashi was on. If you were paying attention to the music, he released songs, he released videos, he'd say some stuff on Instagram, he'd sell, his songs would make the charts, whatever. And then there was this almost like subterranean track underneath it of Nine Trey and gang stuff and shooting at people and violence. And they were running parallel, right? And we had one, and we were slowly getting the other bit by bit. You knew it was there, right? But I got it bit by bit until he testified, at which point, again, everything we'd uncovered, he just sort of reiterated. Right. But in the digging up process, it was kind of fascinating, really, especially because like the relationship between the rap world and sort of street gangs is complicated. And I wouldn't say Tekashi was typical, but it's also not untypical. Maybe it was just more open, right?
Yeah.
Up until obviously the cooperating witness part, which is atypical.
Yeah. to put it very lightly, that's atypical. It's like that, like the reason I brought that up is because like reading the reporting and seeing all the things that you've done on this one person over the course of the last like 3, maybe 4 years at this point, like it's exhausting, like devoting so much of your time and energy to one person. It reminds me a lot of Jim De Regatas, I think is how you pronounce his last name.
The guy who was,
exactly. Like he, you weren't exactly covering 6ix9ine for like 14 years like he was with R. Kelly, but like it's the same amount of devotion and just like the same amount of attention to detail, just like connecting all the points on the tack board, like that's not easy, no matter how long you do it for.
No, and I remember making the podcast. Shiva and I locked ourselves in a little tiny conference room at Complex, and we put all of the events that we knew about on Post-it notes and put them in order. And it really looked like one of these conspiracy theory walls, right? It was just filled with Post-it notes of like all the stuff we knew about that happened, and like putting it in order and moving it around, and which ones are we going to cover in the podcast and which ones are important and which ones we leave out. It was just like, and imagine sort of coming up on all of those one by one, or hearing about them and then needing to verify them or whatever. It was an experience. I'm so glad I went through it. I'm glad that with this book, kind of pretty much everything I learned is out there. And we can get into some more recent stuff later on if you want, about sort of his latest press tour, but or clubhouse tour or whatever it is. But I'm glad it's out there. I think it's a fascinating, absolutely fascinating story, and I think it really only could have happened in Trump's America. And it's to me it's kind of it is the most fascinating hip-hop related story of the past half decade, it's whatever.
It is definitely one of the most prevalent. And just like, before we even move on to the more detailed stuff, like just in general, like, did you experience any burnout from all of this? Like, was there ever a point where you were like, was there ever a point where you were kind of like on the ledge, like, I can't do this anymore, like I need to step away? Because like devoting so much time to one person, like, it's just like, I don't think people understand how crushing that can feel.
I will say the period around the trial was very intense, and funnily enough, I actually missed one day of the trial because my wedding had been the day before.
Right. So, that's even crazier.
So in the middle of this trial, I remember like on the way to the courthouse calling the vendor to make sure we had enough tables or whatever, like it was a very intense period.
Wow. Yeah.
So yeah, that was that was a lot. And the trial itself was a lot. Like, you're just going to the courtroom every day for, I think it was 3 weeks or something, 2-3 weeks, and it effectively became my office. You're there all day. And especially during the brief period where the jury was deliberating, where there's literally nothing to do, and you're either in the courtroom while there's literally no one there, or you're just kind of outside the courtroom chatting with people. Yeah, it was definitely a lot, but I think just like needing to really see it through, having the end goal first of the podcast, and then and always of the output of the reporting, and then the podcast, and then the book, definitely like kept me going. But yeah, I was very relieved when the podcast was over and I could kind of like take a break and reassess and
Right.
take some time before going into the book.
Like, yeah, like let me tell you, I've been called in for jury duty twice in my life.
Mhm.
Both times I spent the whole day in the waiting room waiting to be called for a case, and I never got picked up. So I basically just spent an entire workday just sitting in the waiting room, just waiting for something to happen. Like I bring books or I bring my laptop and do some work or some shit. But like, so like my experience with the courtroom is pretty limited because of that. Like it's not as extensive, but like, just like the details that I picked up just from like the atmosphere that you put forth, especially in the chapters 11 and 12 of the second portion of the joint. Like it's just, like it's like, and you can really say this about the whole book in general. Like it's so vivid. Like the writing in this book, it just like balances like the hard fact reporting with this like really engaging writing. Like particularly with the two sections that always really stick out to me are the section recounting Tekashi's appearance at South by Southwest and the whole Rap-A-Lot Jay Prince and Jay Prince Jr. The whole that whole bit, and then of course the robbery of Scumlord Dizzy at This Is 50. Like the way you wrote out the Scumlord Dizzy robbery, like just like jumping from like them being at the interview to like Shoddy and Harv and everybody running up to the building. Like it's just you really managed to just like you managed to keep it so kinetic. And like I was just like gripped, like I was watching like 16 Blocks or something, like just something so just like really nice action thriller stuff. And just the way that you're able to like bounce between those two things and not have it seem like tonal whiplash, like that's not an easy thing to do. And like was like these like those two instances in particular for me kind of they felt like a microcosm of everything I was reading, because everything else, those are the two parts where I started to notice that the book in general had this kind of energy to it. So like, was this dichotomy something that you were thinking about while putting the book together, or were you just kind of like writing and it just came out that way? Because like you painted the pictures. Like,
thank you. I mean, I think a lot of it was just having internalized the material, right? Like, talked to Dizzy a couple times. I was there when I'd already written a story for Complex that was somewhat different about some of those incidents. Like, I'd seen the testimony from the different people. I reread it and went through the court documents. So when all of that is just sort of bubbling up in your head, for me, it's just kind of, I'm not going to say the first draft came out exactly like it is, but
right.
It just sort of came out like, okay, well, now I know what happened, and I want to make sure that, I'm telling it in a way that to me is linear and makes sense. And I'm glad it was energizing and, action packed, because it was a crazy thing. I think part of it is also part of it also for me is like, no matter how many times you go over this stuff, there's still that holy shit factor, right? The wait, really? Rush hour in Times Square, you're just going to run into a lobby with a bunch of guns and film it and send it to someone afterwards, or in the Jay Prince case, you're going to taunt this like notorious, frightening figure and just in his hometown and like think that's going to be fine, you know,
Like,
there's a sort of like make your eyes bug out factor to it that's there perpetually for me, and I think I guess I just wanted that to be there.
right. And yeah, you know, like it's kind of hard for it to not be, because it's just it really is one, like, this is the kind of stuff that like the true crime podcast fans like drool over. Like there isn't as much like murder, but it's very much like it's very
I mean,
much
only because of Bad Aim, honestly. Like,
yeah,
you
like,
know,
and
this is
yeah, and that's another thing. Like there were so many instances where it's just like miraculously so and so missed. Like I saw that so many times. It's like, damn, like it's just like, is somebody gonna get hit? Like, is this gonna happen? Like I almost wanted to read just to see if like he actually got the shot off, because like,
yeah. I mean, unfortunately, there was a woman who in one of the Tekashi and Shadi ordered, you know, shootings, did end up getting hit in the foot.
Yeah, at the cookout, right?
Yeah, the cookout. Yeah, and you know, but she wasn't a target. You know, like
right.
So yeah, I mean, so even shots that miss their target can still, unfortunately, do some damage. But yeah, there were a lot of missed shots, or shots that hit cars that didn't hit people or whatever.
Right.
You know, fortunately for I think everyone involved.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And just
one thing I will say is there was a shooting related to this case that did end up with someone seriously hurt. It did not make it into the book because it was sort of, it would have required 2 or 3 steps away from Tekashi that just made it an early draft but didn't fit. But, you know, so there, in this whole mess, there was someone who was shot in the head and very seriously wounded. Oof. And the person who did that shooting ended up getting 20 years in prison for it.
Wow. And, you know, like, I'm actually happy you brought that up, because there's also like the other thing that makes this feel like so much of a crime drama to me, outside of the whole like holy shit like eye bugging factor, like you were saying, is all these secondary and tertiary characters that are coming in, like you know, like his baby's mother Sarah, and like particularly Jorge, like the driver, like just how, and like especially considering how he wound up becoming an informant, and like kind of having that perspective happen in the background. And then in the middle of the courtroom, like there's like one of the last chapters I read was when everyone started to put the pieces together on the fact that Jorge was the informant the whole time. It's kind of giving this like I'm trying to think of like a proper movie to compare it to, but something like I guess like a Goodfellas, or like a Training Day, just like like when everything just like when the knot gets tied, like, wow, like that's really like, you know, like we know or actually I would compare it to something like have you ever seen, what's the movie called? It's oh man, Hugh Jackman's in it, Jake Gyllenhaal's in it. Oh man, I gotta look this. I love this movie. I just don't remember what it's called. One quick second. Where's this? Early life. Shit. I'm so mad. I should like know this title, but I just don't.
Well, but it's fine. I mean, just one quick thing about what you were saying, like, you know, the strand of Jorge in the book, I think is pretty important. He has a really engaging and ultimately pretty sad story, right? In terms of like how things panned out. Like he was, during the point at which he was an informant, just to give a quick sort of overview, Tekashi stopped paying him. Tekashi just stopped paying a lot of people at various points for various things. So, but Jorge can't quit for a number of reasons, one of which he's a government informant, and he's likely to be, and he will be deported and likely arrested again if he stops working. He has to keep working, but he's also not making any money, so he's driving Tekashi around for a full day and then working another shift to actually make money as a driver after he's done with Tekashi. It was just an exhausting you know, a horrific, exhausting time with like no time to see his family.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, like particularly his young son. Like that's like, you know, and then like everybody else finding out that he was the informant is like there's this movie called Prisoners. That's what the movie is called, where like one of the great tricks of that as like a crime drama to me is that like you're given like you have the information and like you know most of what's going on, but the characters in the movie don't. So the stress from the movie comes from you knowing and them and being like, oh, when are they gonna find out? Is it maybe now, later? So like that's so like that Jorge story kind of at you know, outside of being like horrible, like it's just like it really struck me in a real way. But
Yeah,
just like
there's definitely situations where he's sitting near 6ix9ine and Shadi while criminal stuff is going on and saying, oh my God, I have to tell my handler about this. How do I do that so they won't see me? You know, I can't text him in Spanish because Tekashi knows Spanish. How am I, he's sitting right next to me. How am I going to do this? You know, it's a lot of drama.
And the fact that he was already recording everything already anyway, just because he was paranoid, like off some other shit, like that's just, it's just, these are the layers you're talking about. And the fact that you managed to bring in these different perspectives for however long you need to, because like you do devote quite a bit of time to him in particular and like kind of laying out his story in a way that I think really benefits the whole package. Like that's just, it's just so hard to maintain all of this stuff. And then on top of all of that, to go back to 6ix9ine, you have you know, like he's like, you approach this story with, I feel like a really like you approach it with enough nuance and just the slightest bit of empathy to kind of get us to understand like why he's like this. Like coming in, I had no idea the story about his father and his stepfather, him finding his stepfather like, you know, like beaten to death on the side of the street and being diagnosed with PTSD, you know, like, and it's like it provides context into why he might have gone down the path that he did with his abuse and just like the manipulation and everything, while not disguising the fact that he's a slime ball, like a manipulative and thirsty slime ball.
It's yeah, thank you. I mean, definitely you don't want to read a book about someone who is purely, you know, where the whole question is, why should I care what happens to this guy, right? That's not something you want to do. By the same token, the book is very clear, and I try to be very, very clear every time I talk about him, that this guy has done some, to my mind, unforgivable things. You know, not even getting into the cooperating witness stuff, leaving that to the side. You know, I don't, you know, I don't necessarily feel like, whatever, we can talk about the ethics of that later or not. I don't, you know, have much of a horse in that race, but he admitted 2 years of domestic abuse. Obviously, Sarah claims that he forced her to have sex during an incident in Dubai. You know, that's alleged. He didn't admit. He did admit to beating her during that incident. So, and then there's the thing from 2015 involving the teenage girl, which I go into, you know, in detail in the book. So he's done some pretty unforgivable things and, you know, dissembled or lied about them. So you always want to keep that in mind too. But, you know, and also, not but also, and also, you know, like you said, there's a history. There's a lot of terrible things that happened to him in his own childhood, and these aren't one-to-one. It's not he had a bad childhood and so therefore, right? Plenty of people have bad childhoods and don't do these kinds of unforgivable things, but he did have a life and a childhood, and there is a context to everything that happened. So it's a tough line to walk. I tried to walk it in the book, and I'm glad to hear that you feel like, you know, all of that is contained.
Right. Yeah. And like, honestly, considering like I'm gonna be completely honest, like this story it was everywhere for a long time, and it got to the point where I didn't really want to hear about it anymore, just because like he was everywhere. And when I heard that your book was coming, and when I heard that you were involved with the podcast and stuff, it's like I knew that you were the only person I wanted to hear about this from, because of what you had been doing. Like if it were anybody else, I don't even know if I'd be doing this interview. But like I know that like I knew that I could trust that you would tell a complete story that didn't come across as either like hagiography or like something like so nihilistic that it's like unreadable. Like there's like you found that middle, and this is a story that's important for so many different reasons. On top of like I'm not gonna list them all, but I think the most I don't want to say important, but like the sexiest one, I guess, is the fact that he's a snitch.
Mhm.
And that's a big no-no in rap, as most people know. And I just appreciate that this is here. So like so that someone somewhere has the whole story, and like there's at least something to go. This is once again going back to the archival thing. Like this is just more archiving of like what you said. And I think I agree. This is probably one of the most important stories of the last 5 years. Like people will be like 6ix9ine is going to be like, people are going to be talking about him in songs for years. Like he's going to be like name droppers, like a don't be a 6ix9ine. Like I'm
Right.
surprised it hasn't happened more, to be honest. But like this is like a watershed moment for contemporary hip hop for sure.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I mean, look, the snitching thing is interest. His relationship to the snitching thing is super interesting because after he, when he starts going out in public finally again, he does the video where he presents himself as a rat. He has the rat
yeah.
chain or whatever. He does the video where he's dancing around with handcuffs to the Cops theme song. So on one level, he's kind of saying, I did it, so what? Right. But there's this other level. And I think this second level has become more prevalent as the months have gone by, where he's tried to define his own cooperation out of existence. Right. He's tried to define snitch. He said, I'm not a snitch because a snitch is, someone who does what I did, but with these other set of circumstances too. Right. He's become weirdly legalistic in defining snitching and tries to define it so narrowly that it effectively doesn't exist. Sorry, let me just mute this. I apologize.
No, it's okay.
1 moment. So so that's what that has been very interesting to me. To see that on one hand he says, okay, yeah, I did it, so what? I did it, I'm the bad guy, I'm always the bad guy. And then on the other hand to say, well, I didn't snitch, there's no way I did. Snitching is when you tell on people who were nice to you as opposed to people who were mean to you,
Like,
which is sort of the version of the argument he's putting out there now.
right, yeah, definitely splitting hairs. And like like I feel like Morgan Freeman did the interlude on Savage Mode 2, where he broke down the difference between snitching and ratting. And like I heard this thinking, like I wonder how 6ix9ine would feel about this. Like that was a moment where I was like, like when you hear Morgan Freeman saying something like that, like your whole shit is cooked. Like that's just
right.
That's another level.
Yeah, I mean, look, the you talk to any gang cop anywhere, they'll tell you people cooperate,
Right.
especially in federal cases, especially in racketeering cases, but not only. And another thing that I get into the book a little bit that I found out after talking to gang cops is effectively like, there's one way to look at the prohibition on snitching that's like, oh, it's this untouchable thing and it's so important. Another way to look at it is it's a rule set to protect higher ups at the expense of people on the bottom, right? That it is a sort of, people don't follow it as much as you might think. but also the reason higher ups want people to think that it's followed uniformly is that it protects them.
Right.
So that's sort of, a maybe more cynical way of looking at the prohibition on snitching, but certainly one that matches up with, law enforcement's experience of it, I would say.
See, saying that the way you just said it, I thought about the closing track from Push's from Pusha T's "My Name Is My Name," the song "Snitch," which for people who don't know, it's an acronym for "Sorry Nigga, I'm Trying to Come Home," which I think is incredible. Like and like that's really, that attitude is more, like you said, that attitude is more prevalent than I think people tend to realize, because it doesn't really get reported on as much. But those who know, and those who don't, like, the speculation is kind of just too delicious to ignore sometimes. Like we like spectacle, and I think that's another big lesson to take away from this whole 6ix9ine thing, is like, regardless of whether most of us loved or hated him, everybody was in on the spectacle. And I think that's a big part of this book as well, that you try to really dig down to.
There was a year you could not look away, right?
For real.
Where, even people who were involved, even Shadi's lawyer, would wake up every day and look at his phone and say, what the hell did this guy do now?
Right.
Like,
yeah.
It's, love him or hate him, like, you couldn't keep your eyes off of him, at least for that initial period. And I think it's interesting now to see him trying that same approach in a changed context.
Right. And another thing I've been thinking about a lot is, like, Shmurda just got out of jail. Like, Bobby Shmurda's out and free, and like, he's almost the polar opposite of everything that happened with 6ix9ine. Like, he didn't snitch, he kept to his morals. Like, that's the reason that he was in jail for so long, because he wouldn't tell on anybody, and he kind of like stuck to that code in a way that, like, it's that's why I thought it was so interesting when I just think that these two things happening so close to each other is such a crazy yin yang, like two complete sides that inform each other type thing. Like, I'm almost really interested to see how in the future people kind of process what happened with Bobby versus what happened with Tekashi, and how those two things, because, like, I think we're still a little too in the thick of it to really, like, get at it the way, but like give it like 5 or 10 years. And I think somebody, I don't know who, not me, maybe not you, but somebody should, like, people are going to think about that and look at that. And even if it just goes as surface level as like a reference in a song, like, I'm more Bobby, less Tekashi, or some shit like that. Free bars, by the way. Like, it's just, I'm just like, that relationship is so intriguing to me. I'm with you.
And it's funny now knowing the person who was their initial connection, right? Tekashi's DJ Punch.
Exactly.
Who, obviously who is the host of our Pop Smoke podcast. He was just such an engaging personality when we interviewed him for the Tekashi podcast. And we knew he was from Canarsie, and so we needed to have, we were like, this is the guy, and we knew he knew Pop, and said, okay, well, this is the guy, we need to host this thing. But yeah, it's funny hearing, from Punch, the whole story of how, like, how Bobby ended up on the record, and how the when I woo back, those my guys, like, how that lyric ended up on a Tekashi song in the first place, and whatever. And sort of the bit of a connection between their stories, hearing sort of from the inside how that happened is pretty interesting.
Yeah, I agree. That's just like, yeah, there's definitely, especially considering that Punch is the connection between the two of them. Like, that's something that I think needs to be explored. I hope it will be, especially considering considering where Tekashi, or where Bobby's career goes from here, because he's only put out like one song. He's doing and just because I'm thinking about it now, I'm so happy to see him out and about and just, like, happy and thriving. Like, seeing him be interviewed by Deezus and Mero was probably the happiest I've been all year. Like, that was such a pure moment, like, seeing him get to go on this victory lap has been beautiful to me.
Yeah, one thing I would encourage anyone who is listening to think about is like, if you look at the parole conditions Bobby is under, they're pretty rough. I have to dig them up somewhere, but it's like, you know, let's see.
Yeah, it's really intense.
It's tough. Yeah, it's very tough conditions. Yeah, I don't know where they're on this computer somewhere, but yeah, it's tough. It's like there's there are all kinds of things that any rap star could do on camera that he could do and get him in trouble, right? There was definitely a like drinking, or I think being around like known gang members or advocating for gangs or whatever, stuff like that, that, could be very loosely interpreted, right?
Right.
And yeah.
The 8 p.m. curfew is the thing that got me, because I found him. So yeah, he's apparently not allowed to drink alcohol or go to bars like that. He's not allowed. He has to avoid hanging around gang members. He's subject to random drug tests, and he has to go to like anger management. And he also has an 8 p.m. curfew. Like he can't be out past 8 p.m. and he's not up for reconsideration until 2026. So he has to, like, he's just under these such harsh conditions for the next 5 years. So like it's like he's out of jail, but he isn't. Like that's unfortunately the dirty side of parole.
Yeah,
like,
and I mean, some of these conditions, and I saw this delving into the Pop Smoke story too. You're kind of set up to fail, right?
Yeah.
And it's a sort of constant, we can violate you anytime we want, we've got our eye on you type situation. Pop unfortunately didn't live long enough for it to become an issue, but the conditions of his bond in his federal case were not quite that restrictive, but very restrictive. And he had already had to like cancel shows, whatever. And, they were pretty bad. The podcast goes into them a fair amount. His lawyer and his label head sort of reaction and recollections of Pop's reaction to them. Because imagine being a 20-year-old kid and you're a star, and all of a sudden they're telling you, you can't hang out with your friends, you can't drink, you can't smoke. Howard, he felt it was like being in jail already. It's sort of
absolutely
how according to people close to him, how Pop characterized those conditions.
And then like on top of that, sorry, I just lost my train of thought. On top of that, he never got the chance to play a show in New York. Like, of course, like most people know about what happened with Rolling Loud, like him and Casanova, and I think 5 Foreign too was one of them. But like, just like
he had to bail out of the BK trip because of those parole conditions. The show that happened over in Flatbush, because there was specifically a very vague condition that he couldn't associate with. The phrase was known gang members, which is a meaningless phrase that doesn't mean anything. It's not like New York has a list of known gang members that they could check his associations against. It was kind of whatever they wanted to call it. And playing the BK Drip show would have been too big a risk. And the parole board, I believe the parole board, I'd have to double check this, but I believe it like actually asked him to cancel the show.
Wow. Because he was on the bill for a show in Brooklyn that played the King's Theater. Was that
that's the one? That's
okay. Yeah. He was supposed to play because Alphonse over at Pitchfork, shout out to Alphonse and shout out to Pitchfork. They he went to that show and Pop was supposed to play, but
Pop had canceled sometime before, and it was somewhat of a, his lawyer was a little upset that the show organizers didn't make that more clear.
Okay.
But yeah, he was originally on the bill, but was forced to pull off because of the conditions of the federal, the bond he was out on for his federal case, because of this whole known gang members thing.
That's so crazy.
It was not just a no show the day of. It was like had been figured out a little bit in advance. Yeah, I am in the middle of sorting through a lot of these issues around rap and policing for another project that hopefully you will see next year sometime. And there's a whole lot there. That's a whole other podcast, whole other 2 hour conversation, whole other book,
Right.
whatever.
Yeah, right. Like, and just like before I ask you my last question, like, yeah, just
Mhm.
like that's like, like that also gets back to like the hip hop police, which is a whole other story,
Mhm.
that I know a lot of people, I'm pretty sure you included, have written about in the past. And like,
Mhm.
and,
I
and,
have,
and
yep.
like New York is just like, like the NYPD just does not like rappers. Like, I think they've made that abundantly clear since the shit really started to pop off. Like, and like they keep on saying that the faction's been disbanded, but it's really just going out under new names, and it's just like it's just an endless cycle that's just led to so much bloodshed and so much confusion and so much jail time and subjugation and racism. And just like, I think that like, as long as it's a problem, it's stuff that needs to be talked about. So, I think that's why I think, like, I think the 6ix9ine story is it's a little different from that, but
Yeah, I always viewed the 6ix9ine story as like a little stuff overlaps with it, but it is not by and large a story about those kinds of issues, about the
definitely not.
enterprise operations unit, as the hip hop police are now called. Yeah, it's very much guys who did shit,
Oh
right? Like
yeah, absolutely.
there's not an issue of like people were framed. Everyone in the case either pled guilty or was found guilty at trial of everything they were accused of. um yeah, I would say like it connects in some ways, particularly around the issues of like how racketeering laws are used,
Mm-hmm.
which is a whole mess that hopefully you'll hear, you'll see me delve into in the medium term future. But it's a little bit of a separate thing. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, yeah, just like it's all a part of like the big complex web of like
Mhm.
policing in New York and policing as it relates to rap in particular. But like, like you said, like they all pled guilty. And this is and I think a lot of this also has to do with the fact that most people just don't like him. Like, for obvious, like me being one of them. Like, people don't like 6ix9ine. Like, he's somewhat like, it's kind of even gotten past love to hate at this point, because like nobody talks about him anymore. Like, he is his like outside of the context of all of this.
Mhm.
Like this is, like his 15 minutes as he perceived them are kind of up. They've been up since like last year, if we're being
Yeah.
honest.
Well, I mean, look,
Like
it seems that way, but at the same time, this guy has been good at getting attention his whole life. So I wouldn't be surprised if, there's a few tricks left up his sleeve to keep us all going. Certainly we're seeing with this whole like Black 100 team up, another kind of
yeah.
series of stunts. Um, I don't know how much public interest there is in that. Certainly the occasional outburst gets attention, but I don't know how much how close people are paying attention to it.
Right. But okay, so now before I ask my last question, because you last night last night I tweeted that whoever plays 6ix9ine in the eventual biopic that I'm sure somebody's gonna try to make out of this book, whoever plays 6ix9ine is gonna walk away with the Oscar on some Joker shit.
Hey,
Like,
look,
I'm
if,
not
if
even
someone
playing.
wants to if someone wants to adapt Dummy Boy, get at me, get at my agent. You know what I'm saying? Rights are available.
So I gotta ask you, in the 6ix9ine movie,
Mhm.
who do you think should play 6ix9ine? If you had to like pick somebody, like, because I'm curious now.
I don't even know. I just don't know. I would hope I would I would hope that it'd be someone comparatively unknown, because you wouldn't want, I think any actor who is like super well known is probably too old. He
Yeah.
was, 21, 22 when a lot of this stuff was going on. And I think you want, if not someone exactly that age, someone who could plausibly be that age to kind of get that across. Yeah, I don't know. Hopefully, someone unknown with a ton of chemistry who could make you believe that, you need to pay attention to them.
See, that's what I was hoping you would say. Thank you. Yeah, because there's, yeah, it's got to be someone new. It would like we probably haven't even met the person yet. The person's probably still a kid. Let's be real. Like,
Right.
but yeah, I've
Like
just been
some
thinking about that a
15-year-old or something
lot.
now, so that when they eventually make it. But yeah, movie producers, holler at my agent, man.
Hey man,
I got you.
Yeah, you know where to find them. So like so yeah, um, my brain. So with huge, so like while huge zeitgeist moments like this tend to take up a lot of space in the worlds of writing and podcasting, like like beat writing and reporting and interviewing is just as vital to like creating like a picture of a scene that you either like really appreciate or is extremely important to the culture at large or other people. Like, and like the thing that's really interesting about you, Shawn, as a writer and a reporter is that you also, like you've spent the last couple of years of your life reporting on all of this 6ix9ine stuff, but you and I cover almost like the same beat with like independent rap, and you're like very much invested in what's happening. Like I hesitate to use the words underground at this point because I interviewed Navy Blue a while ago, and like we kind of hashed it out about what exactly like underground means in 2021. But like that particular like independent rap scene, because like I remember when you put out your the piece on art rap you wrote for Complex, and I was like, wow, like just to see that make it to a site like Complex, and to have someone like you who I know is extremely well versed in like at the shows and like has, if not relationships, at least like an understanding with these artists that other people don't, like to see you do that. Like, and I thought about it last night, like this 6ix9ine thing is a beat in the same way that is, like this is all beat writing. And I feel like beat writing is something that was kind of underappreciated over the course of the last like 5 or so years, and has started to slowly come back in vogue, especially on the wave of things like, like the SoundCloud era and 6ix9ine, and, like considering the fact that Woods and Elucid just played Central Park 2 weeks ago. Yeah, like that's like, amazing. Wow, like
I wish I had felt comfortable enough in large groups to go to that, but I'm not there yet. As we're speaking in August, I just I wasn't there at that point.
Yeah, I totally get that. I needed to be there for that. Like it was amazing to see, and just like so much family, and just it felt like a watershed moment. But like to see, like seeing as you're someone who's like you're on both sides of the spectrum. It's not even like you could claim one or the other. You've been on both. So like you're in a really unique position in that regard, because I can't think of many other writers and journalists and podcasters who like are so in tune with these two poles. So like as someone who's in that position, like what to you is the significance of beat writing within music, within journalism in particular, within journalism in general, but within music journalism specifically? Like what's the importance of beat writing in 2021?
Oh, I mean, it's crucial. Like it's great to be a generalist and sort of go where we're called, but there is nothing like having a particular corner of the world that is yours. I was very lucky, like I said, that Complex gave me space to, whenever I needed to go to court, I went to court, and didn't, maybe I'd show up at the office afterwards, maybe I wouldn't, whatever. Like it really enabled me to learn and to kind of figure out from there, expand from there, from one case to, okay, I guess this is how federal cases work. Okay, I have thoughts about racketeering. Okay, Pop Smoke got arrested in Brooklyn. How is this other federal court different from the first one? Oh, this case is local. How do what on earth, or, is a state case? What does that mean? And kind of expand from there to a broader look at court reporting and the legal system more broadly. But it all started from really honing in on this one case and every nuance of it, and like, what did the judge say today? And like, going even to the hearings where they were like, okay, where its only purpose was to set a date for the next hearing in 6 weeks or whatever, like really being at that ground level was so helpful. Um, on the underground rap side, like that was just me writing about some shit that I really, really, really liked. And that luckily checked enough boxes on the, things that are okay to cover in complex during this period of time that it could fit, that was like good enough to get okayed by the editors. They wanted to branch out a little bit, they wanted to try it, whatever. So I feel very fortunate that I was able to get that art rap article, out there. And that just came from like me, a lot of the music that I'll listen to when I just am not worried about what am I going to cover, what do I just actually am curious about, what do I want to hear.
Oh.
I was so grateful to be able to fit that into complex, and I, whatever, I think one of the things that article actually did okay at was reveal the discomfort or the varying levels of comfort that people have with even thinking of themselves as a scene. Certainly, I think Woods and Elucid to an extent are like, well, yes, we have things in common with each other and, Milo or, excuse me, Rap Ferreira. Yeah. And, and Quelle, and we're on each other's records and we get it. Quelle was a little less like, was a little reluctant to kind of see it as a scene exactly. But, I tried, I think, my best to capture that in the article and hopefully defend why I do see it as, somewhat of a movement, even if kind of amorphous.
See, yeah, when I was talking to Navy, that's the word I used was movement. Cause like the two words I love are movement and community. Cause like if you go down even younger, like we're talking about people like Mike and Navy Blue and Kia and like that whole kind of scene, like Mavi, as well. Like there's such a, like there's a bit more of like a, like there's like an open exchange between artists in that movement scene, whatever you want to call it, that like most of them are a little more open to, like there's like a clear sense of community between most of them, outside of a few people who I won't name. But like, I just find, like, I just love to consider that stuff like what they have going on and what stuff like older people who are also kind of sort of in that same community, but also not, like Woods and Elucid and Quelle and Rap Ferreira and all of them. And then you look at something like 6ix9ine and it's like, that's all a part of the same whole, but they're all separate beats. And the fact that you're able to like being able to bounce between that is not easy. Like people think it's really easy, or at least it's not like super challenging to be able to like switch your brain in these different ways. But like it's always really remarkable when I see people able to do that, because like that's something that I aspire to in my writing, especially recently. So like it's inspiring, and it's on top of being inspiring to me personally, it's super important to know that it can be done and done well. So like shout out to you for that, for real.
Thank you, Dylan. I really appreciate that, man. Thank you for having me on this. This was a great conversation.
Yeah, thank you. Like I know I kind of went a little off track a little more than I wanted to, than I usually do on these. But yeah, man, like I feel like this has been a long time coming, and I've really been such a fan of your work, like for a while. Like you really, like since we're still here, one more thing, shout out to you for giving Royce the business in that interview that you did, because like that was something. Like
there was a little afterlife to that I'll save for the memoir, but thank you. For people who don't know what we're talking about, Royce had a vaccines or cause autism lyric in his last full length, or maybe the one before that, and I interviewed him, and we had a pretty contentious exchange about it that is pretty much verbatim in the article on Complex. So thank you. I couldn't let that pass and not discuss it. I think it's,
Of
more
course.
relevant now than ever, unfortunately, but
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
No, that was just important for me to say because like that's, it's always I always like to point out people who interview people, but like it's not 100% positive because not every interview is going to be like that. And you stay 10 toes and just kind of like, like did your thing. And yes, that was just like, because like I know a lot of other people probably would have just tried to like skirt it, and like you didn't, like you went at it. So shout out to you for that too.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Hell yeah. Thanks for listening. Shout out to y'all for making it this far. And shout out to all the Black people listening too, because y'all really impeccable. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell a friend to come through next time.